Hello and welcome to another episode of the Postmodern Prometheus.
Yay! I'm Asha.
I'm Nancy. And this is going to be our first review episode.
Yes.
We have been watching a Frankenstein-related media adaptation, and we have thoughts.
Yes, so a bit of backstory. We're going to start with the 1931 James Whale film with Boris Karloff.
Yep.
The DVD was not working. We had to go to Netflix. The only Netflix film with Frankenstein-related content is 2014's I, Frankenstein. Who's the director? Do you remember?
Cannot remember.
It doesn't
who
really
it's
matter.
directed by.
All I know is because it was somewhat based on a graphic novel by someone whose name I also can't remember, but
Who actually wrote the film as well.
Yeah, I think he wrote the film as well. I'll do a fact check in a second, maybe while you do some bits. But yeah, so basically, the person who wrote the graphic novel and was also involved in writing the film was also involved with the Underworld films. I think he was the creator of those, and it very much shows.
Yes, indeed. So we have just spent our morning watching this excellent example of Frankenstein media. And so we'll just start with a bit of a summary of what happens in the film. Do you want to give a summary?
Yeah, sure. I didn't actually write down a summary. I'll just say what's in my mind.
Okay, all right.
So basically, the film starts off with a bit of dubbing from the Creech.
Voiceover.
Yeah, voiceover, as it's... So the film
Commonly known.
The film starts with a bit of voiceover from the Creech saying how he was created in a lab by Victor Frankenstein, and in a bit of a character turn, Victor is a bit more of an active player in this, and when he realizes he's done something wrong, he tries to dispose of the creature. Mm-hmm. And then the creature reacts in kind by murdering Elizabeth, and then Victor tracks him down, dies of cold. And then Victor brings him back to his what was it, his family's burial ground, or where his family is buried.
The creature takes him back to his
back home to bury him,
plot.
saying it's more than he deserved, but something, daddy, something. And so this is the first 3 minutes maybe of the film.
Which basically covers the plot of the book.
Yeah, and that is probably the beginning and ending of anything really connected to the Frankenstein story in this film.
Yeah.
And
after that, the creature realizes he's kind of an immortal being who...
Well, before he realizes he's an
before
immortal
he realizes that.
Just as he's burying Papa in the ground, he is set upon by some demons who want him because reasons, blah, blah, reanimation, evil plot, Satan-ish things. And then he is saved by these gargoyle angels, who then take him back to their gargoyle angel queen, played by Miranda Otto. Mm-hmm. She will be from now on called the Miranda Otto Gargoyle Queen, because I don't remember what her name is in the film.
Her name is Leonore.
I prefer to call her Miranda Otto Gargoyle Queen. Mm-hmm. And who gives him the name Adam. Doesn't ask him if he wants to be called Adam. It's just like, your dad didn't give you a name. That was sad. I'm going to call you Adam. And he's just like,
It's whatever. The best offer he's got, so...
And yeah, basically she's like, join our war against the demons.
Yep.
She's like, you were created in a lab without a soul, but there is potential for you. I see the pain in your eyes. She's like basically Nancy and her love for the creature. I see the pain in your eyes, child. Stay with us. And the creature's like, nah.
He kind of takes some sticks. He's offered some weapons. So he chooses the sticks, obviously.
He's offered they take him to a weapon room, and he chooses the dumbest weapon. And then he goes off and lives in the wilderness for a while until demons track him down.
Yeah. So,
Then
like,
he wanders back and there's, like, battles and the gargoyle angels are like, hey, stop fighting the demons out in the light. We fight in the shadows.
right, we should mention that this is about 200 years.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's fast forwarded to kind of the present day.
Yes. Apparently the creature is immortal, which is not baseless.
No. So I guess he is kind of a very old creature at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the
been-
novel, Victor does say says that nothing but a violent death could kill his creation. So it does make sense that the creature is immortal. It doesn't age. It stays at what's his name? Eckerson?
Oh,
Adam
Aaron
Aaron Eckerson?
Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart. He stays at Aaron Eckhart age face for the rest of time.
Yes. Well, I had this question which I wanted to pose to you, which was, so at the beginning, his hair is long,
Yeah.
but then he kind of, as time passes, or as we skip over 200 years or so, his hair gets cut. He
Yeah.
cuts his hair. Do you think he is capable of regrowing hair that he has cut?
I don't know. I mean, he doesn't age, but like he heals.
Yes.
So like I'm presuming hair growth is a thing. I mean, I think this film poses more questions that maybe deserve our
No, this is the one
the-
question I took away from this film.
Look, I think time will give us that answer, but also this film is not getting any sequels. So it wanted some. It wanted sequels and like underworld
Tie-in.
crossovers.
Yeah.
Tie-ins. Which, I mean, I'm not a fan of the Underworld series because I haven't watched barely any of them. But like, I think that could have been cool because I think this the idea of this movie lends itself to this idea of like Frankenstein's creature as this like immortal vigilante, which is not that dumb an idea. I think it could be done well. It's probably been done before. I can't think of an example, but I'm sure it has been explored.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, or the concept of it at least. Sort of these supernatural literary creations living on.
I think it wouldn't even need to be like a collection of literary characters, but I think even just like, you know, a vigilante story with like Frankenstein's creature, because public domain.
Yes.
And like maybe some original characters, and then there are like demonic and angelic bigger things in the background. Because, you know, that's the foundation of a lot of, as we were saying before, comic books will have, you know, just very human vigilante characters and then super natural beings and then like big mythic things all like slammed into one. And that's kind of what this film is doing. But whereas comic books will start off with a simple idea and then grow and then like have all these interconnecting stories and different issues, this takes everything and throws it at the wall at the same time. And, you know, all this, the story of Frankenstein and then the angels and demon stuff is all like in the first 5 minutes. And you're already kind of just like, what's happening and why should I care?
Yeah, I think it comes from, like, the adaptation comes from a place where you should care more about the whole battle between the demons and the gargoyle order. And it's like, well, we don't know anything about the gargoyle order, and, like, the creature is only introduced to them kind of in the, you know, like, in the first few minutes, but you don't find out anything about them. None of the characters are particularly well developed in any sort of way. So it just kind of comes off bland and a little bit boring.
Yeah, I think because, you know, the creature is supposed to be the kind of audience character learning about this, but the creature in himself is already like this fantastical creature that the audience is learning about.
Yeah.
So, like, I think, about 3/4 of the way into the film, probably more than that, he teams up with this pretty science lady who, and we'll get into more of the plot in a second, but he teams up with this pretty science lady and he's sort of explaining to her the, like, war going on and, like, how she's involved and all this. And I was thinking, like, this is probably, like, where the film should have just begun. And then, you should have maybe begun with her as, like, the main character, and then he comes in and is this intriguing thing, and then it just gets, like, bigger and bigger. You know, it starts with Frankenstein's creature and this science stuff, and then it turns into this, like, demonic war thing.
Right.
Like, that, it wouldn't have been a great film, but it would have been a more coherent film.
I think alternatively, you could start where it did start, but have a sort of slower progression.
Yeah, I wrote that in my notes as we were watching it.
Yeah, where you kind of gradually learn a lot, like a little bit about the Gargoyle Order, or maybe he's just a vigilante working by himself, and then he comes, so kind of more like a police procedural with, you know, like a sort of overarching conspiracy plot type of thing.
Or even, like, if he had stayed with the Gargoyle Order for, like, the 200 years and had been, like, working with them, and, like, you know, they're all immortal, so time moves, like, really quick for them, so he's still trying to gain their, like, trust and, like, a familial affection after, like, 200 years.
Yeah,
and,
because...
like, I don't know, there are ways to make this work.
It is, like, a little bit jarring, to get back to the plot, is, like, he stays with the Gargoyle Order for, like, a day or just a little bit of time, and then he's like, oh, no, I don't actually believe what you guys are working for, but I also want to kill demons.
Yeah, well, because he's kind of, like, he says in the voiceover, like, you know, I'd been betrayed before, and I was kind of like, when? I mean, like, Victor you didn't have any hope with Victor. He, like, abandoned you on delivery.
Right.
You never, like, were given hope. No one ever sort of, like, let you down or, like, gave you hope after that.
Yeah, because he never had that trust with Victor in the first place.
Yeah.
Unless you think of, like, the whole creation itself as some sort of broken promise or...
it, like, was not explained well. Anyway, maybe we'll just briefly... So the rest of the plot is... angel-demon war, lots of battles, kind of incoherent, and as that's happening, there is this, like, dodgy evil science corporation thing headed by Bill Nighy, because, of course, hang on, how would an Underworld tie-in have worked if Bill Nighy is already in Underworld? Was he the same character?
I don't know, I have no idea.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe Bill Nighy just has clones of himself in the Underworld world.
Yeah, anyway, okay, so Bill Nighy is the head of this, like, evil corporation that are trying to, like, make Frankenstein creatures. And I mean, that would have been enough, but, like, then he's actually, like, a demon prince, and he's got all these, like, corpses ready to be animated, like, in the basement of his, like, corporation, and he just needs to figure out the way, and as soon as he, like, infuses life onto these things, his demon army are gonna come out of, like, hell, which is below the corpses in the bottom of his evil corporation.
His basement has a portal to hell, pretty much, directly.
Yeah, so the levels go, like, portal to hell, and then, like, all these, like, like, hundreds of strung-up corpses, and then it's, like, the business. And he needs, and Nancy picked up on this. This went, like, well over my head because this film is ridiculous. But, so demons can only possess bodies that don't have a soul, apparently? Or something like that?
So I think the idea is the demons can't possess human beings when they're alive because human beings have souls. But there's also no point inhabiting a corpse because I guess corpses can't move or anything. Although you would think that if you're possessing a corpse, you could make it move, but who knows? It's very confusing.
Yeah.
So all the demons which have been descended, I think is the word they use, like they've been killed, he wants to bring them back so then they can inhabit the reanimated bodies of these dead corpses.
It's a very incoherent plan, and I feel like there is a simpler version of this. Like, you know, he really didn't need the demons, or the demons could have been metaphorical, or just like, just same as the gargoyles, just sort of in the background, or like maybe, in how in like Wonder Woman, the Ares character is just like whispering the bad ideas into the human characters. And so the human characters are evil, he's just encouraging them. You could have done something like that, and that's like what the demons are doing. And then you could have cut out all the dumb battles, but then that was the point of this whole film.
Yeah.
But anyhow. So that's the other half of the plot, is he's trying to do the thing to get all the things. So he's looking for either the creature or Victor's journal.
Yeah.
Who, the gargoyles have the journal because they took it off the corpse of Victor when they found the creature when he was trying to bury the Victor.
Yeah.
Christ. It is a simple movie, but for some reason it's like quite complicated to explain.
It's quite convoluted. Like, there's a lot of sort of random plot elements that kind of work together, but also it's like overly, like, you don't need that. Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
The Bill Nighy wants the journal, or he wants the creature, and then the pretty blonde lady scientist is working to sort of reanimate life, and then they get the journal. We could explain the plot of how they get the journal, but it's pointless. There's like a battle, there's like some fighting, there's a kidnapping, there's like an ultimatum, they swap the kidnapped person for the journal. Anyhow, the scientists have the journal, the scientist demons have the journal, and he gives it to the lady, and he's like, okay, make life, and she's like, yeah, okay, I can probably do this. Oh, hey, he used electric eels. Who would have thought of that? And
that was funny.
That was kind of funny. It was also like how they did it in Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. So there's that.
So it's
they're stealing from the worst one. Also, because this novel also puts a lot of focus onto Victor's journal, which is something the Kenneth Branagh one also kind of did. Well, not in the same way. I think it was just like one scene where Victor doesn't really realizes he doesn't have his journal anymore, and he just does a dramatic sort of look to the camera as it sort of zooms in and there's music.
Yeah.
That's a great film. It's not, but I like it. Anyhow, it's better than this. It's more entertaining than this. Anyhow, so then the creature breaks into the science place, and then breaks out of the science place in the exact same way. He just runs through a window both times. He has his solution to every problem is the Cowardly Lion solution to conflict. It's just run out a window. So then he meets up with the science lady, and he's like, you're in the middle of this big war between angels and demons, and she's like,
what?
No, I'm not.
I don't believe you.
And then the demon comes and she's like, oh, I believe you now. And then they have some awkward chemistry.
Yes, he is shirtless in one scene while she stitches up his cuts or something. Which is like...
a thing that happens.
Ugh.
So, yes.
And then there's a big fight at the end where and then the creature destroys Victor's journal because he's like, I don't need this journal anymore.
There was a whole thing. He was mad at the gargoyles for keeping the journal from him, and then Miranda Otto Gargoyle has a really good line. She's like, you're like a miserable creature because you were rejected by your father and all humanity. A journal isn't going to tell you anything more.
Yeah.
It's something like that, but a bit more poetic.
No, that was a good line. I think there were some good...
There are a couple, good bits in it. Anyhow, so then big battle happens. The corpses are almost reanimated and everyone's fighting, and then, a demon almost gets inside the creature. And then Bill Nighy is like, welcome, my son, you have taken a great body. And then the creature looks up and he's like, I am not your son, my name is Adam. And Bill Nighy is like, what? How could this? You have a soul? And I guess that's kind of the theme of the movie.
Yeah.
It's what makes a human, what makes a soul.
What is, does he have a soul?
Yeah, I guess... in the least, I guess, a thorough and interesting way. ever done, this film is sort of posing, what makes human, what makes a human?
Sure.
Is it like God-given, or do we earn it? And,
Yeah.
all that shit that's been done
Yeah.
in, I think, different ways.
I think actually it is a bit like Blade Runner 2049 because it's kind of like dealing with that question of, in a lot of theological texts, it's like the soul is provided to you through your parents in the process of natural birth. So can an artificially created being have a soul? And that's the same question that Blade Runner has as well. And it's kind of the central point in this, but obviously in this one it's pretty it's not subtle at all. It's just like he has a soul now.
Yeah, it's also not really like built up at all.
No,
I mean, he just sort of says a couple times like, I don't have a soul, and we're like, okay, whatever, Adam.
Yeah, you kind of like don't think of it as a point of conflict, really. He's like,
he doesn't seem conflicted about it.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, I don't have a soul, and he's like accepted that.
Yeah, like there are a couple times where like he seems like he feels a bit guilty about killing Victor's wife, but like at the same time he's a bit just like,
Yeah. I think, okay, should we just go into the adaptation aspect?
Yeah, let's talk about adaptation now. That's the gist of the plot, and then like it ends with him sort of looking over the city, becoming Batman, I guess.
He says, I, Frankenstein.
Yeah,
name
he's like,
drop.
I the sender of demons, of like something that he actually isn't, and it was confusing. I, my father's son. I, Frankenstein. Oh, well, because that was a thing that Bill Nighy's character keeps calling him Frankenstein. He's just like, that's my father's name. I'm Adam. He's like, yes, but you are your father's son. We are our something lineage, something that doesn't tie into the broader themes of the thing. It was kind of like an interesting point if it had a point. In summary, this film has some interesting ideas, but like doesn't develop them, just sort of says them and kind of hopes.
Yeah.
Something.
It kind of glances over these themes, which I think would be really interesting. So let's get into the adaptation and the sort of themes of this thing, if it can be said to have themes.
Yeah, themes. I mean, it's surface themes.
Yes. Okay. As an adaptation, I thought it was pretty true to the original story, and what I found interesting was how sympathetic they were towards the creature.
Yeah.
Like they had no, I guess, compunctions about making the creature sort of the hero character in this adaptation. Whereas I think a lot of other adaptations tend to be a bit more ambivalent about, I don't know, like I guess because this is an action movie and you couldn't really have Victor.
Yeah.
But Victor came off just in the 2 minutes.
Yeah, Victor is certainly not the villain of the piece, but is portrayed as like a villainous character for, rejecting the creature. But, and yeah, your only perspective of him from the creatures is it's like an unwanted father that he sort of doesn't want a connection to, that in the end he does kind of accept, I guess in the same way, biologically, if you were related to someone who you maybe wouldn't want to be related to for whatever reason, and then learning to just accept that is your lineage, and you just is who you are. With it. You don't have to be them, but like that is your lineage, and I guess, he takes his father's name, but like makes it his own and like follows his own path. I think that's giving this movie a bit too much credit. Yeah. But I think that is like what it's saying. Yeah.
I think it's also very, like, you can say it's sort of apologizing for his murder of Elizabeth as well.
Yeah.
Because he's very much, like, the scientist lady just says, oh, so you haven't killed anyone since you killed Victor's wife. And he's like, no, I haven't.
It's still a pretty, like, she was a defenseless woman.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty... It's not a nice thing to do, to put it mildly.
No, but you never get the sense that he feels only through like sort of acting face do you get the sense that he might feel guilty about it. But I think if you really wanted this to be, because he's clearly supposed to be like a tortured villain, I mean not a tortured hero, I mean, but
Yeah.
like I don't know, they don't set that up very well, because you
No.
never see him actually rejected by anyone. He's
No.
just walking around being grumpy because he's got some scars on his face and his dad was mean to him.
But he is also played by Aaron Eckhart, who is
Yeah.
kind of like a conventionally attractive person.
Yeah, he's
And
fine.
then when he's shirtless, he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, conventionally muscly,
Well, like
whatever.
they never. No one ever describes him as being ugly. Like he
No.
doesn't even refer to himself as being hideous. But he just like knows he is wrong and like
Yeah.
that he is unwanted. He keeps saying like rejected by humanity, but you never see humanity reject him. You see
No.
humanity, like modern humanity, just sort of like look at his sort of like scarred up face, and it's not even in disgust, just in kind of like a
Confusion.
yeah, like you never see him like have to go through any like adversity or trials because of how
No.
he looks. They kind of just sort of
Yeah.
almost like smiled, like a mixture of like disgust and sympathy or like pity. I think it's more pity is the looks they give him more than like
Right.
horror.
Yeah, I think that's so weird, the way that they chose to kind of show him as very sympathetic, but then not show what makes him sympathetic, which is like his being shunned by humanity. And like you said, in all the modern scenes, like he isn't really shunned by humans
Yeah, like
at all.
he can walk through humans and they kind of give him looks, but no one gives him trouble. Like he's not chased out with pitchforks or like whatever the modern equivalent of pitchforks
Yeah.
is. Twitter, I don't know.
I think it's interesting that they tried to kind of say that what makes him monstrous or rejected is the idea that he doesn't have a soul,
Yeah.
and is that he kind of is, I don't know,
Well,
it's like othered in a
Yeah.
sort of internal way.
I mean, I think you could also think of his like seclusion and misery as very much self-inflicted by like probably his own atonement for what he did to Elizabeth, though that's not stated.
No.
But like I think it probably should have been.
Yeah. I think it would have made it stronger and made him more sympathetic if he was sort of in some way atoning for, like, or even suggesting that he recognized that it was sort of wrong, but then he's still, like, in that scene where he's talking with the female scientist. With,
Her name was
her
like
name is
Tara.
Tara Wade.
I don't know what
I
it
think
was.
so.
Tara. The actress's name is Yvonne something. She was on Dexter and she was on Chuck. Oh, that's the other thing. This film was made in Australia, and like half the actors in it are Australian doing English accents.
But Frankenstein's creature has
he's
an
American.
American accent.
It's It's
jarring.
also like a lot of scenes are like very obviously Melbourne.
Yes, it was pretty fun. We were going to get into this in the next bit.
Don't give me that look.
No, but we can get into it now. But basically, it was like a fun spot the Melbourne
Spot the
scene.
Melbourne.
There
What's
was-
CGI and what's Melbourne? Can you tell?
So the big cathedral was really weird. It was like CGI having imposed a huge cathedral in the middle of
Yeah,
Melbourne.
because Melbourne doesn't really have cathedrals.
Well, it has.
We have cathedrals,
Some.
but they're not big cathedrals. Like,
No, this was like a Notre Dame style,
yeah.
sort of Gothic building, and obviously no
Melbourne
buildings.
is just like baby England. Like,
Wannabe.
we do have some like nice old architecture, but like it's small compared to like stuff over in England.
Sure, or just like rest of Europe in general. But you know,
But this is, I think it's supposed to be set in London, is it?
well, it doesn't actually make it very
Who knows?
clear.
Oh, no, if it's Victor's resting place, it should be Geneva, but
Guess they couldn't film.
But yeah, no,
there.
she's doing an English accent. I'm assuming it's London or somewhere in England.
Yeah, I thought they tried to go for more of a French/Paris vibe because you had the sort of big cathedral and all those sort of avenues, at
Yeah.
least in the CGI.
In summary, this film is not clearly placed.
However, you can spot the Melbourne tram and the refurbished Melbourne train.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a Melbourne University student or just know the architecture of Melbourne University, you can recognise Melbourne University in like some shots. The obvious one is the underground car park that was also in the Mad Max films, or one of them. But there are a couple where someone's coming out of a building and it's definitely like one of ours, or it's like one of our colleges at one point too.
The door to the labs is kind of like the water wall in front of the NGV. And I think in that scene there was even like a cleaning person in the background. So I wasn't sure if that was like a mistake or
I think that was trying to make a mood or make it look like night or
all right. But
no, I think
obvious.
The worst offender was definitely like the tram. That was just very clearly like a Melbourne Metro tram. Because does England there are trams in anywhere in England, or is it
Not
trams
in
are a very
London.
like Melbourne thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like, I think once you put a tram somewhere, like
And they
you're in Australia.
Like they did not even get rid of the branding on the side of the tram. It has like the green trams colouring as well. So it's like,
I mean, usually I'd say just set it in Australia, but like this is a film you kind of couldn't set in Australia because again, we don't have big cathedrals with like gargoyles that like are these ancient beings.
Yeah.
Because I mean, again, we have some nice cathedrals and nice buildings here, but they're they're babyish compared to I think what this was going for.
I think that's why I think they were going for more a Paris vibe as well, because there's like the gargoyles in French type architecture is more prevalent.
Well, I think we'll never truly know where this film was set. It probably said at the beginning of the film.
I don't think it did. I don't think it had a location.
Yeah, I know. Let's just pretend it's Geneva.
We'll say it's Geneva.
Geneva and their trams.
With their Melbourne trams, yeah.
Stop stealing our trams.
Oh, and also to mention that the portal of hell is directly
under Melbourne University.
Yeah, which seems legit.
Yeah.
It's legit.
That's about right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. What else do we want to talk about?
Well, we were sort of like in the middle of adaptation when I derailed it into the Melbourne tour.
Oh, yes.
What more Easter eggs, I suppose. There's like one or two.
Oh, yes. So we've got the Walton Theatre where...
Yeah, which I mean, look, I'm not 100% in belief that the writers of this read Frankenstein, so it could just be a coincidence.
I think it was meant to be a reference.
Yeah, but it's literally the only one.
And then they also say alive multiple times.
That is the lowest bearing fruit. That is strawberries growing out of the ground, low-bearing fruit.
That's true. I don't know, like, I'm trying to think, do any of the gargoyles have names or things that are significant?
All the gargoyles just had very, like, generic fantasy character names.
And the main demon guy, his, like, human name was something Wessex. So I don't think that was particularly...
Yeah. No, I thought he was going to be able to tie into something interesting, but no, he was just Bill Nye.
Being Bill Nye.
Being a demon, being Bill Nye.
Yep. I thought he was pretty... Like, he was really phoning it in this one.
Well, I mean, he was just Bill Nye-ing.
Yeah.
He wasn't really bringing anything more to the piece. It was just Bill Nye-ing.
I gotta say that it seemed like a very, like, it was very short on dialogue as a film. I didn't, like, I think even the creature didn't have that many lines.
He said very little.
Yeah.
It's like, I think about halfway, 3/4 of the way through, I was just kind of like, This guy just doesn't say... I don't know who this character is, because he says little, but, like, the camera also isn't focused enough on him that, like, it's enough. Because, like, what's his name? Aaron Eckert? Whatever. He's, like, he's a good actor. And, like, he's... You know, he does his best with this. I think is the kindest way to put this. Like, he does a good job with what he's given, but he's not really given much.
No.
Because, like, he doesn't have many lines, but also, like, the character really isn't thought through enough to, like, get away with saying little. Like, you know, the Boris Karloff, or, like, you know, old Hollywood Frankensteins, who also say nothing. They have a lot of personality, partially through makeup, partially through, you know, good acting and just, like, a very simple plots.
And the like, film focuses on them and shows them, you know, reacting to things in non-verbal ways, even when they're sort of silent parts. And in this one, the film is really, like, just unfocused. It's kind of focused more on the action sequences.
Not even, like, the war thing, just, like, action sequences. Yeah. It's kind of, like, just jumping to the next set piece to do the next fight.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the kind of focus being split up between, you know, this crazy theological war between gargoyle angels and demons and then the story of Frankenstein. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. But, like, this film didn't do it good. Because, I think I was saying this before. This is not, like, a terrible concept. I think, you know, the story of Frankenstein has been done to death in, like, a million ways. Some of them faithful to the novel, many
less so.
Not faithful to the novel, doing their own thing. I think, you know, taking a character from Frankenstein and putting it in different contexts is, like, an interesting way to, like, revisit the novel or revisit the story. And I think the idea of having the creature as this undying vigilante character, this, like, sort of brooding, tortured, trying to atone for his sins and also just, I guess, his existence.
That's a very interesting and also very sort of classical idea in a way. It's very, like, typical of a Gothic type story or, you know, more... I don't know, it's just a very old trope to have the person who's atoning for things. And I think it would work quite well outside of this movie.
Yeah.
With this character as well.
But, like, even, you know, in this circumstances when you do also have this kind of outlandish angel demon thing, I could think that could still work with this. Again, like, I think the idea of, like, these gargoyles, like, watching over the city and they're actually... angel type thing. I don't think they actually are angels. I think
they're, like, under the command of some archangel or something.
But they are just gargoyles, but they're, like, watchers over the city. And, like, I think that's an interesting idea because I think gargoyles are cool.
Yep.
And I think, you know, the connections and parallels between, you know, stone angels and stone gargoyles and the fact that they are kind of doing the same thing really is an interesting idea.
What I find frustrating about that concept, though, is even though the gargoyles are supposed to be protecting humanity or whatever, this also is an idea that's not well explored in the film at all. They don't seem to actually do any protecting of humanity. It's very much like the demons are hardly threatening any real life people, and it's very sort of just them fighting, and there's very little of actual, like, oh, we're saving the humans from the demons or something.
And I think the danger is when you go into movies do the whole angel demon thing is I think it's easy to do interesting things with angels because angels are usually, in these circumstances, are a bit morally ambivalent because they're either, like, higher than humanity and sort of, you know, dismissive of them, or, like, there's always an interesting way to do the angels because they're always the ones who are sort of teaming up with the human characters or whoever has to do the fighting. And, like, even if they're sort of if you're redoing certain tropes of them, they usually have an interesting part to play. Demons are just constantly, they're just these sort of dumb, just generically evil, easy to kill, just like, I don't know, they're really boring in this.
Yeah.
They're really easy to kill. You don't care about any of them. Well, they're all played by pasty white idiots who just die easily.
Yeah.
And they've all got the same characteristics. They're just, and they, all they want is, to kill and suffer, cause suffering.
Yeah, they have no real agenda. That's why they're quite sort of boring as villains, because I guess they are just evil for the sake of being evil. They never really have any sort of character motivations or anything. Like, they're barely characters. They just exist as bad guys.
I think which is why, I think on... to even a further dip into like the cultural abyss, shows like Supernatural I think do because they have space to develop things. They often do demon characters interesting. There are plenty of times where they'll just have demon characters and they'll be generic villains, but I don't know. I think while the overall writing of that show has been going down and probably arguably has never been great, but it came out at a certain point where we're okay with that, they do good sort of character writing and like banter. So like, I think even when demons were generic on that show, they still like were entertaining, and then you did get plenty of instances where you had more, you delved deeper into the demon characters, and some were just blatantly evil, but like you still kind of like them. Some were a bit more fleshed out. And anyway, I'm not going to go any further into Supernatural. All I'm saying is like that was a show that like somehow just was able to write demons in an interesting way. And like even when they had to just be generic villains of the week to make the MacGuffin plot thing move from A to B, they could still be entertaining. But like so many other shows and movies where you just have to have demons in there because you need generic henchman villains, they're just always boring, and it's really just like, ugh.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that we still have these media things that's very rooted in sort of like Christian conceptions of angels versus demons, or like demons versus humanity or whatever. And I think like we were talking about when we were discussing the novel, how it's actually not that religious in a way. It's never mentions, like you could read the whole thing as being either an indictment or a sort of reinforcing the natural order of things as created by God or whatever, but it doesn't actually get into any of the nitty-gritty of theology or anything like that. So I think it's an interesting idea to adapt it in a way that incorporates these elements of Christian mythology, which seems to be like really big in pop culture in general. But the way it's done, it's just not coherent. It doesn't gel with the sort of original themes of the novel, being like someone playing at God or the consequences of that. I guess it kind of talks about the soul idea, but
without really delving into the soul idea.
Like I found the soul idea interesting. Like that's what I found most interesting about it, conceptually. But
well, it's kind of the only concept there.
Yeah, but like the greater sort of, like it didn't like tie, that soul idea didn't tie into the idea with the bigger conflict between the gargoyle order and the demons. It's like, why is that important? Why is having a soul or not having a soul like relevant to this conflict? It didn't really say why we should care, really.
Yeah, the I don't know, it just made me think of season 7 of Buffy, when Spike goes and like does all these trials to like get a soul so we can get Buffy. It kind of works.
Well, I mean, I think even this movie, it kind of is like, oh, he has a soul now. Okay, he can have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
In this.
It was a little bit just like, did he have a soul? So did he have a soul the whole time? Did he earn it? He didn't really do anything good. He just sort of befriended this chick.
Yeah. And she, like, he was not shunned at all by her.
Yeah. She actually, I think she was kind of the only interesting character in this film.
She was quite good, I thought.
I think, yeah, it was partially... I think it was more acting than writing.
Yeah. She definitely fills that sort of damsel in distress role, I guess.
She's a damsel in distress, but, like, whereas... in a lot of action films where the woman is there just because you need a woman there, I don't know, this, again, maybe it was just the acting, but I don't know, she was more interesting to me than, like, a lot of lamp women in film are.
Right. Yeah, because she's, like, tied into the plot, and she has a plot purpose outside of just being... you know,
Yeah, and she was, like, a little bit quirky without being, like, you know, this is my character type quirky.
Yeah. She just seemed pretty normal, I guess, like, in a realistic way. Like, she just wanted to do her job. She was a bit obsessed with life and death.
She wants to save Carl. Oh, she doesn't save Carl. Oh, Carl!
No,
Carl!
dies.
Carl is her, like, older, like, lab partner who, they both get kidnapped by, like, the Bill Nye villain, and he's just like, oh, so you met the creature, you saw the book, you know how to make, like, my Frankenstein army, don't you? And she's like, yes, but I'll die before I show you how. And then he kills Carl. He's like, don't you want to see him again? And then in the very next scene, she's, like, doing it, and we're just like, shit, her and Carl must have been, like, close. I thought...
Yeah, I mean, that bit was kind of pretty inexplicable part of her character. I guess she's probably a little bit more Victorish than we thought, because she's very ready to, like, do this
sacrifice morals.
Yes, do this very questionable thing for the sake of science.
I mean, she's technically a Victor character in this. Because she is trying to create life.
Yes.
And then, well, no, she doesn't. Well, she does actually figure out how, but she just doesn't quite get up to the doing it to humans part as fast as Bill Nye wants her to.
Yes.
And so he's like, here are the cheat codes from Victor Frankenstein's journal. And she's like, I was really close to figuring this out.
Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, like, what is motivating her? Like, again, that's very an underdeveloped part of her character. It seems like she wants to, like Victor is initially motivated by sort of helping out humanity and doing something positive.
Yeah, well, I don't think she sees the negative consequences of what she's doing, which, to be fair, from, like, a modern perspective, you know, there is less of, like, a potential negative consequence of, like, you know, reanimating life or, like, artificially creating life. And that's not necessarily a Christian-y thing or a religious thing. I think that's more, you know, the creature is... I don't know, I think what happens with the creature is that, like, Victor creates him in, like, a haze of, like, a madness, and, like, he, you know, looks very monstrous, and then he's abandoned, whereas this woman is working in a lab with a partner, being overseen by people. She's, you know, and she is doing it for the same reasons as Victor, just, like, trying. But where Victor, there was a huge thing about ego. With her, it is, you know, I think any pursuit is at least 40% ego, but, like, it is also just very much wanting to help mankind and, like, do good and further the field. So, like, I think, and then, you know, if they do create something monstrous, it is in a lab, and there is, at least I think from her perspective, there are, like, ethical things involved.
Sure. I think what you're saying is really interesting in that it's been, this idea is now given, like, a veneer of respectability, or it seems kind of less, or, like, less transgressive than it did in the 1700s when Victor allegedly created life. And I think the other thing is also that when we see it in that context, we think it's much closer to the technologies that we already have, which is like, you know, you have defibrillators and things like that, which can bring people who are dead back from life, or back to life.
Come back from life.
Come to death.
We have cookies.
But yeah, so you kind of can do things which prolong people's lives, and you have machines that can, you know, keep people who are brain dead functionally alive. So it just seems kind of closer to the technologies we already have, and you can potentially think that she is not actually doing this in a very, like, it doesn't seem as wrong. It's given this, and it's set up in a way that it's all very legitimate.
Yeah, I think definitely because you do have visual cutbacks of like Victor in his laboratory, and you know, essentially he and she, the lady scientists, Tara, are doing the same thing, but just framed very, she's with her, it's done very legitimately, it's done in a team, it's done in like a sterilized lab. There are presumably ethics involved, and they're like, when are we going to do human trials? And she's like, oh, not yet, we've got to do this, this, and this before we get to that. Which, you know, I think you can be seen as limiting the potential of getting shit done, but it also means it's being done in like a ethical way, I suppose. But also I think it's just, you know, she is framed as very like sound of mind and careful and just very sound of mind. And when you look at him, you see him doing it in like a craze. So I think it's
using
it's
electric
all about,
eels.
Yeah, I think in a weird way it is. These things are all about like the visuals of how they're done, at least like through film. Like when you see someone doing experiments and they're on their own, it's usually framed as dangerous because it's someone being like sucked into this like very dangerous obsession. But when it's done in a lab, it's like a job and it's like legitimate. So
Even though, like you said, like what is actually motivating them could be some as much ego as anything else. I think that's what makes Victor's story sort of relevant still. Like in a way, it's the way that it's framed in fiction versus the way that something like transgressive can happen right now is like different. So you kind of, I don't know, like living in this sort of world where technology and science are progressing really quickly, I think you've still got to recognize where ethics are sort of failing in a way when it's being given that sort of veneer of respectability, which makes it, you know, not recognizable in the sort of madman, solitary pursuit of science. Whereas, you know, it's still kind of the same underlying ideas. It's just, be vigilant.
vigilantes.
Be a vigilante. No, don't be
Yay.
a vigilante.
Woo!
Be an immortal 200-year-old plus
Creature.
vigilante.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess we diverged quite a bit from
That monstrosity of a film. Well, we've been trying to give it legitimacy.
Yeah, I think we made it seem better than it was.
It's not. But I think something, not necessarily a Frankenstein adaptation, but like something that sort of delves into, you know, what is the difference between the like solitary scientist and the like the legitimate, and if it's
actually
you know,
different.
really different, and like where is the line, and why was one so bad and why is the other okay? Because again, I think this film, certainly the creature is not portrayed as evil at birth. It's definitely looking at the idea of like responsibility and like not taking responsibility for what you've done as the is the major theme. So, like,
However, I don't think, like, I think that's only said in sort of one line by Miranda Otto's character when she's like, oh, you've been abandoned and you're just evil because, I think she says something like
that.
Something like you're just evil because no one cared, or you haven't, like, your creator didn't have responsibility.
The creature, when he's doing his voiceover at the beginning, was like, disgusted by what he'd done. He tried to dispose of me, and then so I took the life of his wife, life for a life. So life for a life. I guess that's, I don't know if that's talking about Victor trying to kill him, dispose of him, or Victor just neglecting him. I mean, it's probably the former, but I mean, if you want to give this film a bit of credit, you can believe it's the latter.
Yeah, and the film also mentions the companion. So Victor promised him to make a companion.
Very offhandedly, and then it doesn't come back.
Yes. Well, like in the novel, he kills Elizabeth because Victor destroys his companion, which is kind of the reciprocity, a life for a life. But
I don't know, maybe that, like, was the plot, but, like, they felt like they were doing too much, like, wiki notes of Frankenstein. Which, I mean, look, I think they just should have maybe started with a less recap, more just, like, actual showing of, like, Elizabeth's death by the creature and him, like, saying life for a life, and then Victor hunting him down, and then you, like, go into the chaos that is the rest of this film, or even start it at the graveyard maybe, and just mention the dead wife offhand, and then you deal with that in, like, flashbacks.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think in summary, there are a lot of ways this film could have been improved. I don't think it ever would have been, like, fantastic. I think it was always destined to be very middle of the road. But it could have been better than the Daniel Radcliffe, what's his name?
Victor Frankenstein?
Yeah, what was the other actor in it called, though?
Oh, I don't remember.
Redhead guy. Mr. Tumnus.
Oh, James McAvoy.
Yeah. Better than the Harry Potter, Mr. Tumnus, Victor Frankenstein film that was, just very uninspired.
Okay, so I think we've given this film a lot more credit than it deserved. Like, I think it had some interesting ideas that would have been better in a better film /
Maybe
series.
we can track down the graphic novel, because I'm not sure if it was based on the graphic novel, because I was trying to do a bit of research online. And at one point it keeps saying based on the graphic novel, but then I looked up the graphic novel and it was saying it was like a prequel for the movie. But the prequel of the movie is just Frankenstein, so I don't know.
So the graphic novel was just Frankenstein with pictures.
Maybe, I don't know.
I mean that would have been better.
Next week, we'll either see the Justine episode, or maybe we'll do another review. In summary, I don't know what's in store for us, friends, but let's all have fun on the journey.
Yay!
What would you prefer to do next? Do you want to do another film review, or would you want to do...
We'll decide this off air.
We're not on air now. This isn't live, Nancy.
What?
Again.
You've been lying to me this whole time.
You don't appreciate how much work I put into editing, it seems.